How's everybody doing? How's the weekend?
It was good. Very good weekend.
What'd you guys do?
Club.
Oh, yeah.
Club and errands.
How do you feel, Mariah, that you're not part of club? Like, you don't get to come out and have fun and get bit by a bunch of Malinois or...
I think it's fine. I think I do a lot of dogs Monday through Fridays, so I think my weekends are good to just deal with my dogs and whatever boarding dogs I have, and then do human stuff.
You're not like, oh, I want to do something by work or anything like that.
No. I'd rather read a book and lay in bed and take the dogs out.
I forgot. I gotta get you the list of books that
yes.
I promised.
Yes,
to give.
yes.
It's gonna be a nice little stack. Well, today's podcast is going to be about dog bites. Dog bites, how they happen, where they happen, facilities, owners, the whole thing. We'll get into why we're talking about this. But, Jules, your puppy is now 14 weeks old. Has that, now that you're doing a lot of bite work with them, have you changed your perspective on anything? You were working with a lot of pitties, and then pitties with bite histories and everything else. And now you have your puppy, last night, was running around, chasing me, biting me, and I'm on the ground. And, like, obviously the puppy looks like he's nuts, right? And how does it look like from your perspective?
I mean, it just kind of, solidifies the known idea that the reason that dogs bite can vary so differently, like based on the situation, based on like the genetics of the dog and why they want to bite. Because for my puppy, it's just a game. He's playing, and it's ingrained into his being to, have this just innate desire to do it, but doing it in a controlled way where it's fun and fulfilling is completely different than a dog who's doing it out of fear or, out of true aggression and things like that. So I've worked with Malinois before and like high drive dogs who like that, and it's a reinforcing thing for them to bite things, but it's different when you are seeing it in its like purest form as like a baby, that sometimes it's not something that needs to be developed and built from the ground up. I mean, yes, to an extent, and like teaching the specific mechanics and everything, but just that it's already there and it's already bred into him,
Right.
It's really interesting to see.
It's very different than like a dog that, or a Malinois in this case, a different Malinois that's here for a rehab program that doesn't want to be here, doesn't know you, and wants to bite the leash or wants to bite you because it wants to get away from you or find its owners or,
Right.
just escape whatever situation it's in. All right, guys. Well, welcome back to the Dog Tribe podcast. We are back in the studio with Mariah Rivera, who just recently got a promotion, right? She's got a new title, Director of Operations. Yay. Enjoy. It takes a long time to prepare for that role, but I think you're going to do great. You've had a lot of experience in it. You're going to be dealing with a lot of our safety protocols that prevent bite and stuff like that, tries to prevent sometimes the impossible. And then we have Julianna, who for a long time, obviously you're a senior trainer now. You lead our behavior cases here. And a lot of people that are probably listening are going to say, well, she's just a young lady, right? What does she know? But actually, you know a lot. You've spent a lot of years working with us, have had your personal experiences, have the scars to prove it. But also at the same time, you work a lot of dogs, especially being in Chicago where we get hundreds of dogs coming in a year for board and train programs. Sometimes the experience that other people would have over a decade, and some change, we are able to accumulate in years' time out of sheer exposure, right, and everything we're doing. And that's the biggest comparison I've always made with our team and different facilities. We see a lot of dogs. We have 30 dogs in training at one time. And so the behavior program now is led by you. So today we're going to be talking about dog bites, why they happen, how they happen. And my experience has been that you spend many years, sometimes months, without incidents in injuries and bites. And recently we've had two, one for an owner and one here in-house. Nothing that I would consider severe, obviously, but it always comes when it's like things have been chill for such a long time, so much so that I would say we're more relaxed with everything that we're doing, right? And that often breeds the environment for us to disconnect from the danger that dogs truly can be, right? Because you have a 35-pound dog that can cause severe damage. If they wanted to, they choose not to, right? And a lot of them don't have the behavior or the personalities to do that. But in the cases where they do, they can be a serious threat to dogs, people, and themselves. So I wanted to open up the conversation and obviously hear your guys' personal opinions and experience on, how common are dog bites in the industry? How have you guys been involved in them? And for me, I feel like they don't. Whenever they happen, is because somebody was careless, right, or didn't want to believe something about a dog. But what's everyone's experience? How do dog bites normally happen?
I mean, yeah, it's always going to happen with handler error, in my opinion. Anytime a dog bite happens, either someone goes into it thinking that like their ego kind of gets in the way and they're like, oh, yeah, I got this. And then they don't anticipate the dog's reaction to certain situations, and or the people get really lax. And again, that comes with overconfidence or sometimes it could also happen with underconfidence. And then they really want to prove themselves, but they are going into it already nervous about the situation. And then the dogs sense all that. Dogs always sense your emotions and things like that. And if you're uncertain, it makes the dog uncertain, which leads to dog bites.
Right.
And outside of ego too, like underestimating the dog's capabilities.
Yeah.
That like, oh, this dog has never done this before, so it'll never do it type of thing. I've had that happen to me before where I've known a dog for years and all of a sudden, we see a slight behavioral shift and you don't take into consideration that can lead to more extreme behaviors,
Right, for sure. And I think for dog owners and people working with the owners, there's also a disbelief that about a dog, or they tell themselves a certain story about a dog, right? Like they get adopted and they refuse to see the dog for what it actually is. A very common situation that we see here in Chicago, and I've seen it over and over again, is in like generations of different clients, has been, I found a dog, I found a pit bull, chained outside, tied outside, emaciated, skinny, and I took it home, right? I took it home, it was beat up, it was scarred up and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that, but the dog often is not very compatible with our lifestyle, right? Meaning that it's going to come into our home. We're essentially, through our lifestyle, going to build its confidence, right? But us rebuilding the dog does not remove the previous experiences, right? And I think those are the situations that catch people off guard, where it's like, okay, I've raised this dog now, nursed it back to health. Now the dog feels great. Now all the behaviors are coming too, right? All of a sudden, like, it sees dogs and it wants to attack the dogs. Or someone tried to come to my house and my family came in and now it attacked them at the door, right? And so I've seen those situations over and over again, and I see the disconnect between the dog they rescued and their belief about them, and also a disconnect from what dog bites actually look like, right? Because dog bites hurt, and in many cases, you can lead to permanent damage, right? And severe injury, depending on where you get bit and how severe is the attack. Where are situations where we feel like people get bit the most? Or like, what are some scenarios or dynamics that people have with their dogs or in facilities where you start feeling like, oh, I think this might lead to a bite if we're not on top of it?
Lack of handling skills and being able to read the dog. Because I think, people don't actually know their dogs as well as they think they do, and they don't know about the nuance behind like arousal levels and like overstimulation, because a dog can be perfect 99% of the time, but as soon as they get into that mindset of where they're in the red zone and their mind is not operating properly, a lot of times the bites aren't necessarily intentional, right? So when a dog is kind of in the mind of like already being frustrated, already being in that over arousal mindset, and the thing that is triggering that isn't available to them, so then they like redirect that and channel that energy and that frustration onto the closest thing to them, and that could be the leash, it could be another dog, it could be their owner. And I just actually had an evaluation very similar to that, where it kind of goes back to what you were just saying too, of like the person adopted the dog. It was like this small, scrawny pit bull thing that was very, cute and pathetic looking, and she nursed it back to health, and now he's in his most confident point in his life, and he is starting to display a lot of reactivity issues. And if he can't get access to the dog that he's reacting to, he goes for their leg. And so it's not because the dog is like wanting to aggress towards their owner. They just don't know how to properly go about regulating themselves in those moments, and they just do the thing that would satisfy that desire to eliminate that frustration, basically.
Like redirecting, like you get a dog and you take it, you take it out and it doesn't have access to biting the dog that it wants to bite, and then it comes back at you or another dog. One thing that I've seen in facilities is the dogs that sometimes when they have a Kong or something in their kennel and you walk a dog by them and they can't get to the dog and they pick up the toy and shake it instead, that's a form of reinforcing the idea or the behavior, I would say. In facilities and teams, for other operations out there, Mariah, where are the areas where we should be more worried about dog bites?
I would say new technicians coming in and handling dogs that their arousal levels do jump around all over the place, and them not knowing what to do and how to move on from the situation. Because a lot of the times you'll see like new handlers with a dog that gets overly aroused, they kind of get stuck. Like they won't keep for us, we like keep the dog moving, like don't let them kind of sit in that. And a lot of new handlers, they'll kind of do what owners do, and they're like, oh no, the dog's like loading up on this thing, but they don't.
Yeah, they'll just stand there. Yeah,
they'll just stand there and freeze, like, oh no, and they don't realize that you can keep the dog moving and prevent that from happening.
Get them out of the situation.
Get them out of the situation, and or again, like not them needing to understand dog body language, because a dog will tell you how they're feeling pretty quickly, and if you don't know how to read that, you can put yourself into a really sticky situation with a dog potentially being able to bite you. And so I think that for like new facilities or facilities in general, if they don't prepare their handlers to read dog body language and develop the like advanced handling techniques to handle situations where a dog might come and bite, that's where you're going to see a lot of bite cases.
What are some early signs of like a dog possibly biting, and some early signs that people just ignore?
Whale eye, tail tucked, ears pinned behind the ears, snarling. Yeah, I would say things like that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like the snarling is a pretty like, more visually obvious one, There's like more subtleties too that like, going back to the idea of like a dog redirecting or things like that is like catching when they are loading into that moment of drive and that frustration or that aggression, where it could be more like posturing, stiffening up. They completely perk up, but it's not in like a friendly, interested way. So, and sometimes it's more difficult to do this when you're in the heat of the moment, but like the eyes dilating, things like that, their lips pursing, all that good stuff. Not good stuff, but and and it also is like, how do we respond to that moment where the dog is not yet there in the red zone, but is leading up to it, So like, for instance, with a dog who does those types of things, if you are acknowledging that, oh, this dog might react, and then you proactively try to, stop them from doing it, it can have the opposite effect of what you want it to do. It can frustrate the dog more, or, just add another element of, of an annoyance to where they're already kind of in an agitated state. And so therefore you kind of inadvertently activate the dog into what you were wanting to prevent in the first place.
Like if the dog is already agitated and your gut's telling you like, hey, this is kind of like gonna go south, because everyone has those moments. Like I've had those moments where like my skin crawls a little bit and you're like, oh my God, this dog is gonna try to bite me. It's like that like silence before something happens, or that silence where like the dog's very focused on something, or really zoned in, and that the next thing you do might cause a reaction. That's where you should get the dog out of the situation, right? Because even if you try to punish things, I've seen more people get bit because they try to punish a dog than any other thing. They're like, and I've seen it with different handlers or trainers where they want to address a problem and the dog's over a threshold and they assume the dog's never going to target them, and then they try to apply punishment to a dog reacting and the dog immediately flies back, right? On the working dog side of things, working dogs, some of these dogs are very hot-headed dogs. Like any Dutch dog, I would say, is a hot-headed dog. And we've had handlers where you could tell the dog's like very like already tightly wound, and then they start using pressure on the e-collar and they start getting stern with their voice. Dogs respond to aggression with aggression. Some dogs do, right? Like some dogs will flatten out. A lot of pet dogs will be like, oh no, please leave me alone. But there's a lot of dogs that have a temper that are more dominant that are going to say, you know what, like you want to treat me like that, I can treat you like that. And they come right back at you, right? And I see that happen. So I always recommend to people like, hey, if you're in a situation where you feel the dog's over threshold or you feel like you can't control the dog, like if you apply a little bit of pressure and the dog doesn't give, you're like calling the dog over and the dog doesn't respond and the dog's so focused in on what it's doing, just leave it alone, get some professional help. Leave it alone and come back to it, because you're really going to find out what that dog's made out of if you start pressuring your dog or dive into the situations. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, because we've seen a lot of people that just don't know when to give up. Like they're so persistent on like removing a dog from a situation or getting the dog to stop doing whatever, like, I don't know, like playing tug or something. The dog really doesn't want to let go of the tug, and they're like, okay, well, I need to do something with this.
Right.
Like they can't have it, and then they end up making the situation worse, and then the dog can. So just knowing when to like give up and be like, okay, you win right now, I'll come back later, or maybe let me stop and grab something that I can trade off with you, and so on and so forth. Because a lot of, especially trainers or people wanting to become trainers, they view it as, I don't want to let the dog win, because then the dog's going to like get reinforced by that. But sometimes you might create a bigger problem if you don't let the dog win just in that moment, and then you'll be prepared for the next time so it doesn't win.
It's an average of winning, right?
Yeah.
You want to win more often than you lose. I would say that that's another way that people get bit. First one's obviously like the dog's in a bad situation. The dog suffers from aggressive problems or, redirects on people, and it's all aggression based. Another one is when people have dogs that are very intense about prey and they get in between the prey item or the prey and the dog, right? Like people should identify that or should know that a dog that's like actively aggressing at someone or a stranger or something and then bites someone or a dog because of that, that's a very different type of bite than like me getting bit because my dog is magnetized to a tug, right? And so that happens a lot, I think, in protection training. A lot of like even labs or shepherds or any dog that's like bred for work, sometimes they end up in the situations where they have a very novice handler. I mean, we see some of the guys that come to club and even guys that own dogs here that are playing with their dogs, but they're playing in a way that is a little too fast or a little too dynamic that accidentally that dog's going to put your hand in its mouth because you're playing too much tug. Do you guys feel like that happens to owners a lot?
Yeah. For me, I feel like I don't run into that very often because we, being a training facility, run into more pet dogs most of the time. But, the pity owners, the lab owners, dogs who just use their mouth a lot to express themselves, they just don't have the coordination yet to be able to know like, oh, there's a potential for me to get in the way of this. You know, they can't comprehend the dog's level of drive in that moment, and that it can, kind of mask their ability to stay on target. But usually those bites aren't very bad. Luckily, it's just more so like, oh crap, and you're kind of caught off guard and like, oh my god, I can't believe my dog got me. But that's a good learning opportunity, especially when the bites aren't that bad. Of like, oh, I know how to adjust this for the next time.
Yeah, and the hard part is talking to an owner about like how that bite is very different than the dog actually biting you, right? Because I've had clients come in and say, well, my dog bites when I do this. And it's like, well, this dog's supposed to bite. This dog's literally wants to play tug, and you're in the way, or the way you're mishandling the ball, or saying it's resource guarding when it's really a dog chasing a ball and it ran into you and you try to pick it up and the dog didn't stop, so it bit you in the hand. That's just like bad manners, not necessarily actual bites. What do you guys recommend for people that are getting dogs on how to prevent bites or in areas where they can get bitten?
Research the breed. It's the first thing. Like, even if you're adopting like a pity mix from the shelter, like be aware of the potential that dog can have. I always say like be proactive and be preventative. So if you're buying a dog from a breeder or adopting it from a shelter, always have in the back of your mind what that dog could potentially be capable of, even if they never do that thing.
Right.
But like knowing how to also fulfill them to prevent any behavioral issues that could lead to bites, whether it's frustration, whether it's genuine aggression, or if it's just like a dog who is completely bored out of their mind and they're just being mouthy and tugging on your clothes and things like that. And they happen to pinch you and you consider that a bite. Like we have a dog in the program right now a basset hound who is still a puppy. Like, he's just over a year, and the family's got a lot going on. They have 2 young kids, and the dad has been the primary handler for him and trained the last dog and had a lot of success. And he's like, whoa, I just have way too much going on. And they were adamant that this dog was like a rehab case. They're like, he's super aggressive, things like that. And I would ask them to describe to me exactly what they were experiencing. And basically what it was is that they were not providing the dog with the needs that would kind of tire the dog out to the point where it didn't feel like it was necessary to be pushy and to be rude and just have lack of manners. You can't expect a dog to just be completely docile if you're not, allowing them to channel that energy in a more healthy way. So he would be grabbing onto clothes, the kids' hair and all that stuff. And it was like, no, it's just a rude little dog. Like, he has no ill intent behind him, not a mean bone in his body. And so being able to educate owners on like actually getting them to know what their dog's actual personality is like and the intention behind their behaviors, I think can be extremely beneficial and kind of change their whole perspective on what it's like to have that dog.
I think that the breed books are pretty accurate. I've never read anything online about breeds or in a book that says, that there's a discrepancy between how they really are. A Jack Russell Terrier, it's really like a dog that can go all day. Sometimes can be neurotic. It's a working breed used for work. Like they're never wrong about that kind of stuff. They're always pretty right. And I think people just don't believe what they read. Because if a dog says needs heavy exercise 3 to 4 times a week, they also...
I've had clients say, like, I take this dog out for 4 times a day for a walk, and we get home and it's still like... Yeah. And so, like, a lot of people just forget that sometimes the dogs need to get better mental stimulation based off of their breed. So, like, toy play or, like, sniffing work or something like that, as well as teaching the dog how to settle is a big one.
Yeah. I think whoever invented... or whoever came up with the idea that you should go walk your dog, they're the problem, because, dude, the culture is adopted like I walk my dog. I remember growing up walking my dog, my 2 pit bulls, and thinking, like, these dogs don't, like, they don't get tired, and they become more obsessed about, like, going around the same block the same way. And, dude, I remember I tried to walk the block the opposite way after, like, 3 years of just walking the same route over and over again. And the dog was so scared. I mean, Rocky at the time, he was just like, what's going on? Like, he was like shaking and I was like, what's up with this dog, right? And the reality is that the routine was so, I guess we're all just so regimented and have the same routine that as soon as the dog went to do something slightly different, it was like, whoa, that's a problem, right? Can you describe a little bit what toy play means for people and how we use it to, balance the dog out or create control or, what does that mean? Because everyone says that in the dog training community, but no one really breaks it down.
Yeah, well, I mean, because I feel like for owners, they just think about like just throwing a ball or having the tug and kind of letting them play tug with them. But I think for a trainer, at least here from what I've learned working here and listening in on like seminars and things like that, there's a lot that goes into it. So I remember like the Pat Stewart seminar, he was talking about how like when you play with your dog, but you're not really in it with the dog knows that and they sense that. And we see it all the time when we're like training them and making videos. The dogs know that we're not really focused on the actual training. We're too busy like talking through what we're actually doing instead of actually doing it. And so they're always not as good in our videos because we're not fully focused. And it's the same thing when we're playing with toys. And anytime I'm talking with the owners, I'm like, you really have to play with them and make sure that you're playing with intention with them and making sure that you're giving your all and making sure that the dog is playing with the toy exactly how you want them to play with the toy, doing the things that you want them to do for the toy.
And also, like, what type of toy play are you doing? Like, there's a difference between a dog tugging and a dog chasing and, all that type of stuff. So what is it that your dog... what is most motivating to your dog? Like, is it a dog who naturally has a lot of prey drive? They probably would benefit from doing something along the lines of like flirt pole and, structured, fetch and things like that, frisbee, things that they can chase and capture and all those things. Whereas a dog who has prey drive, but maybe they get a lot more out of actually biting things, tug would probably be the way to go. And using these games to not only tap into their desire to do all of these high intensity exercises, but to also use it as a way to help your dog understand how to reel themselves back in when they are in that aroused state. So can I get my dog to let go of the toy and to perform passive behaviors while the toy is still active,
Right.
and then have them go back to the toy, and then, keep rinse and repeating that same sequence until the dog understands that there's a difference between the toy being active and they're having the ability to interact with it versus not having the ability to interact with it. And this can translate into that same mindset around things that they struggle with. So if they're dog reactive, or
Yeah, it practices
know.
the mindset, like impulse control. It's
Yeah.
like going to the gym. Is going to the gym to build muscle because you're going to need that muscle for this one competition. Just like our, our video person over here, Tessa. That's what she's
she
doing.
made the face as soon
She's
as
like,
you
this
said
guy's talking about me right now. And I think for me, first of all, I don't trust a dog that doesn't want to play with me. I don't like it because there's like, in my experience, there's emotions there that they don't want to experience and they're dodging them, especially rescue dogs. Like, how many dogs have gotten hit by their owners or smacked around or being for putting things in their mouth? A lot of dogs do that, right? They pick something up, and they get the chancla and they're like, what are you doing? And so the dogs are like, I don't put my teeth on anything. And then when you start playing with them in like rehab programs and training, all of a sudden they're like, nah, I'm not into that. This is my own theory about like the opposite side of that, which is like pit bulls or dogs that have experienced aggression or have been in traumatic events for them, I would say traumatic, where they have used their teeth to bite into dogs or bite people and all that kind of stuff. They're more hesitant to play with people, play tug, because there's this like dynamic of challenge, right? Like, here's the tug, I'm gonna pull it from you and you're gonna do this whole thing, and the dogs are growling and I'm pulling them around. And a lot of dogs, they don't like experiencing that. I mean, there was a dog, I think last year we were playing with, and we would get to playing really rough with the tug, and all of a sudden he'd let go and yipe. And he would be like, let go and be like, no, don't beat me.
Yep.
But that really comes down from like, not from like an owner or a handler using a lot of pressure or punishment on the dog, preventing the dog to truly develop, right? Because playing with the dog is really an investment, and it really helps prevent a lot of bites through arousal control. Also, the dog jumping up and biting a ball or biting a tug, they practice and they practice, so they get really good at it. Just like in bite work, right? The dogs bite the designated targets, whether it's in their thigh or left bicep, or in some areas, even in ring, they teach them to bite everywhere. But there's some preferred areas, right, where they can bite, and the dog becomes really obsessed with biting the same area. I've seen dogs that once they bite forearms, they just bite forearms. Like, they're just like, I'm a forearm biter, and if someone's not looking, I'm gonna bite that guy in the forearm. Always the exact same target, right? So they become confident with that practice of biting. And tug really helps control that, because hey, we're gonna use everything you normally would be using to bite someone, and we're gonna channel it into play. There was a dog that we were filming last week, and we were playing tug with that dog, and the owner was like, they don't really like tug or anything like that. And I look at the dog and I'm like, this dog doesn't look tug. It's kind of ripped. It's like lean. It's got a nice little fat head. It's got like, and I'm like, this dog looks like it will bite onto something and not let go. It can't play tug. But it's maybe uncomfortable with playing. So I, took the dog and I kind of bullied it with a tug for a little bit and like smacked it around. I used to say, hit the dog with the tug, like hit it, like push it, like nag it, and then use this. And then it turned around and it's like, oh, fine, I guess we're playing. And we grab onto this and we're playing tug. So now we're building a lot of intensity about this one toy, which is great for a lot of reasons. And I'll get to that. So when they're playing tug and they build this obsession with the toy, they're going to have to build a really strong outing behavior as well. So like the behavior of chasing and biting something and having all the emotions that they experience gets them to commit further and further into the biting of the tug and play, which is going to make it harder. So there you get the ability to build an out and have arousal control, right? Out, down, heel, go back to the toy and play, right? And that's what we start doing in sport we call secondary obedience. But in reality, that can apply so heavily to any dog that has drive, right? And so I like for the dogs, even the little ones, to like chase a flirt pole or run after a ball, because they're dogs. They're going to have that little genuine interest. I just want to say that a lot of people don't try because like playing with your dog, it is a sweaty thing to do. Like you're like, all right, I'm out of breath. Like this dog can still continue to play, but also sometimes it takes you to go above and beyond to push the dog to play and motivate them. So you get more tired than the dog does. but eventually you'll swap because the dog anticipates those things, right? So that's what I would say. Toy play plays a big part in probably the rehab programs, to be honest with you, is doing those exercises and teaching them to owners. What are you guys teaching in the boarding trains to help with arousal control, and what kind of games do you guys play? Like what activities? What do they look like?
Well, a lot of it is what you just described, is like teaching the dog how to channel their innate drive that they have previously shown towards like dog reactivity or human reactivity and things like that, and to find more satisfaction in this game that can also help build a rapport with the people and build trust, because obedience is great for helping give the dog clarity on expectations and things like that,
Right.
to build routine. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. You also have to make sure that the dog is also trusting you in other ways. And I think one thing that you mentioned earlier was a lot of times dogs will be very apprehensive to want to play with you because they've always seen it as conflict. And even though they're getting some type of satisfaction out of aggressing towards dogs or people, whatever it is, it's not like a healthy mindset to be in.
Right.
And it's kind of, it's something that we as humans, I think that there's still, I think, a lot of research to be done on like, what is the dog actually feeling? Because it seems like they like rehearsing it, but
Right.
it's not something that is actually good for them.
Right.
And so if we're able to help build that trust and like, hey, I can give you clear directive and create criteria of expectations and things like that, that's great. But I also want to be able to have you trust me to have fun with you and to
Right.
build that relationship and things like that.
Back to what you were saying with obedience. Obedience really is only useful when the dog doesn't want anything. Like a big part of it, and this is where I feel like if I start thinking about what got me into training, was that general idea, which was like, okay, most of this stuff that we do on the pet dog training side, or have done in the past, and in my experience training, was that obedience is kind of useless unless you can use it to control the dog. I want to chase a squirrel. I want to pee on something. I want to run around. I want to like run away. I want to chase the deer. Really, nothing else matters if the dog doesn't get practice with that.
Right.
And then those are also situations where bad shit happens. Like, the dog wants to get to the other dog and the bite happens because the dog got to the other dog, right? Or a dog got kicked by a deer because they ran off and they got too close to the deer and they had to fend for themselves, right? Or like, but those are all like obedience issues where, back to what we're talking about toy play, like toy play and arousal control, you're basically building this toy to be the thing that the dogs want. And now you have to create control around that. And that's what starts putting your obedience to the test. Like use that to get the dog to a good place mentally so that you can work them. And you guys do that at PupStart too, right? What are some of the earlier things you guys do with puppies in the program?
Yeah, we don't necessarily like to teach leash pressure or anything like that. So we'll do like a trade-off thing. And so we just like to show the puppies and show the owners that there's a way to channel a lot of those puppy behaviors into a structured and healthy play.
Yeah, and that's
to
so
build a
important.
relationship, because a lot of people don't know that. I mean, I didn't know that coming into here. It wasn't until I started working here where I started to see the value, and even when I started working in PupStart, where I started to see the value in toys, because you're able to, with toys, you're able to practice impulse control in a more structured way that can help prepare them for when they are at home, when the kids are out playing with their toys, and if you practice enough with the puppy should know, like, I can't have that toy unless somebody tells me I can. And also being able to trade between a toy and food, because a lot of the times a dog, once you bring in a toy, they're not taking food, or if you bring food, they're not taking toy. And so with the puppies, because they're so new to everything, you're able to switch between the two and bring value to both the toy and the food, so like that you can use them both to have more quick and effective reps. Because I feel like with toy play, the dogs get amped up the entire time, and if you're able to switch with food, food brings a little bit more of a calmer mindset, and so you can be able to play with both.
Yeah, like as dogs get older, anything that they're doing when they're babies, it's something they're going to do when they're older, right? And the reality, you shouldn't, because those dogs that you let them do everything, they're going to put anything in their mouth all of the time. They're going to go over there and like bite, your furniture and all these different things. So don't let them do anything you don't want now, even when they're puppies, that you don't want them to do as adults, right? And like back to the puppies thing again and Pup Start, like you get to really lay down the foundation of how dogs are going to operate mentally, right? So a puppy that's got a lot of like arousal for prey, which that typically goes hand in hand with possibly biting in the future. Any dog that has like some sort of prey instinct probably has a higher chance of biting someone or something or dog than a dog that is a little sketched out. Even the puppies. Like if you look at two puppies, one's like a little raptor that wants to run and chase things, and another one's a dog that's wolfing in the corner and doesn't want to leave it and is kind of, scared every single time. I would say that the dog with prey has a higher chance probability or higher probability of biting someone than the puppy that's scared, right? Because the one has the confidence to go out there and chase what they want, and the other one doesn't have the confidence, and push comes to shove it's going to cause a bite, right? Push comes to shove is a key phrase. So like it's really important that in the very beginning with any prey dog that you are raising them to understand, to mitigate what you're going to see, or prevent what you're going to run into. Like if the dog loves fetch and they're a puppy, play fetch moderately, and then also have them do downs in the middle of fetch sessions. Don't take a dog and run into fetch over and over and over and over again, because that's all it's going to want to do. It's going to be wired to do that. And then as soon as you restrain it, then you're going to start getting frustration. They're going to get pissed. And then that's where you have a dog that leads into arousal issues, possible bites, right? So it's very do that. So I would say, like, circling back on the bigger conversation, that most bites are predictable. We just don't document the history with the dog mentally to remember all of the steps that will lead to a bite, right? Because once you look back at the past, you start to see, oh, I see, like we could have done this differently. When people are getting new dogs, what do you think they should look out for, or certain scenarios they should keep their dogs out of to prevent dogs biting people or other dogs?
I would say dog parks for sure, because you can't really control the experiences that they're going to have with the other dogs, whether that's the other dog kind of targeting them because of whatever behavior they're exhibiting, or getting overwhelmed in situations. Again, you can't really control what happens in the dog park, as well as sometimes there's kids in the dog park. And so if you have a brand new dog and you don't, and again, prey drive, kids enact a lot of dogs' prey drive. If you didn't know that dog had severe prey drive, a kid could accidentally get bit in there and things like that. Like I would say, if you're getting a new dog, stay clear of dog parks for sure, because you just never know. It's just an uncontrolled environment. And then as well as just kind of keeping an eye out for how your dog interacts with food around you, how your dog interacts with toys around you. Does it bring toys to you, or does it grab a toy and keep it away? And some people think that that's so cute. Like,
it's
oh my
not
God.
Cute.
It's not cute, because that can turn into something else. Your dog obviously doesn't trust you enough to want to bring things to you.
Yeah, it's possession. They want it for themselves, and maybe they like you enough for you to eventually take it away from them or trade, right? But if they don't like you enough and it's a rescue dog or it's a dog you don't know, then you're like, great, this dog feels like it might bite me to keep this thing.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. I would say, especially for like newer dog owners and things like that, going back to what I said about researching about breeds and stuff like that, but more of a generalized thing is people, from what I've seen, like from my experience, they really don't understand like dog body language and things like that. So like there's plenty of resources out there on the internet that gives you a rundown of things to look out for when it's not necessarily like a dog who, is biting for the reasons of over arousal or things like that, but more fearful things, dogs who are more defensive and maybe territorial of space, their people, things like that. And so what can I do to ensure that I am, if it's appropriate, respecting the dog's boundaries, right? And making sure that I am building good habits to set them up for success. So like a lot of times when people are like, oh, my dog was fine for the first X amount of years of people coming into the house and things like that, they would just run up to them, jump all over them, say hi, and then once the dog reaches maturity, some hormonal shift occurs, and now they are suddenly more suspicious of people coming in and things like that. And so what can we do to make sure that the dog has some form of predictability to fall back on, to know what to expect when things are happening to the best of our ability, right? Because we can't control every scenario ever, but you can control what happens in your home, you know, when people are coming over. And so if you know your dog gets overexcited, if you can be more hands-on practice them staying in one area and calming down before letting them say hi, whether it's on place, whether it's in their crate, things like that.
Right.
We would work a lot on like greetings and things like that, which you wouldn't think that's a big deal, but I've had so many people come in being like,
Right.
my dog used to be fine, and then all of a sudden they started getting weird, you
Right.
know? So I would say researching about dog body language and like building good habits from the get-go, whether you have a puppy or an adult dog.
Yeah. And I would say train your dog to be pet by people or don't let people pet your dog.
Right.
One or the
Advocate
other.
for your dog.
Yeah. Like in the situations where I got this from Dogs Playing for Life. So I was there a couple of years ago during an ICP conference. They give a tour of the facility, and they obviously do a lot of the pit bull rescue and they teach dogs how to play, right? And one of the things that they do is when someone approaches to, can I pet your dog? The dog literally engages up to the handler. So it was actually kind of interesting because I would test the dogs and I'd go over there, you know, try to distract them and say, hey, can I meet your dog? Right. And I would lean over and the dog would instantly put like, do this and look up, and, like talk to the hand and just look up to their handler. So I thought it was really cool. So either train your dog to like accept the presence of other people. In some situations where puppies, like, hey, you can pet the dog, but it's got to be all four on the floor, right? So like pet the puppy and the puppy can like receive pets and you're feeding the dog, you're feeding the puppy as it's getting pet. So you're creating some sort of positive association. You're feeding the puppy on the ground while they're petting it. And then when we remove the food and the attention, the dog needs to sit, or the dog needs to sit or stay still, and they're not allowed to come up and jump, or we interrupt the behavior. But that's also a thing that works, especially when you have a puppy, is train your dog with early exposure on how to handle the situations. And if you don't know the dog, don't allow other people to pet it, right? Because if you don't pet dogs, there's a good chance you're not going to get bit, right? And also, if you have a dog that you aren't 100% sure it's friendly, I would say, like, don't let other people pet your dogs. This is a strange animal to most people, right? And while most dogs are friendly, I would say, there's not one dog that I've ever said, this dog won't scare or make a person uncomfortable during the petting experience. Because I have Mona, right? And Mona, yes, you can pet him, but then Mona will be like, oh, I like it, and then randomly howl or bark, boop, boop, and then like people are like, whoa, it scared me, right? But Mona's just being friendly, but most people are just like not assuming that, right? So when even a friendly dog barks in their face while they're being pet, they're scared, right? That's a negative experience for a human. Two, or the dog is so excited and they jump up and up the person and they're like, oh, your dog got, it's too excited, right? So the general public is just usually pretty bad with dogs. Like a dog barks at them, they're scared. If a dog jumps on them, they're scared. And so I would say either train your dog to be very polite when greeting people or avoid it altogether. And then the last thing was like circling back to what you were saying, Mariah, with dogs running away with their toy or something like that. Straight up, like teach your dog to trade, right? Even we have owners that like have had their Rottweiler for like 5 years, right? And they're like, it kind of growls when we try to take its toys. Like, well, call it over and give it some food and then trade the toy, right? Or trade a toy for something else, or give the dog food that it can eat and meanwhile take the toy. Like, conflict is never a good idea, right? Especially for owners. Conflict is never a good idea because dogs have nothing better to do than to read us. Right? So they pick up on your body language, your behavior, all the little details about you, that they can read you pretty well when you're serious, when you're not serious. And if they feel like you're aggressing towards them and they believe it's unfair, they will aggress back. That's a very common thing that can happen. And I mean, what are, Jules, for you, you've seen some stuff with dogs and owners. What are some areas where owners should be aware of any new dog they just bring into the house that you can share, like for safety?
I will say manage your space. Right? Obviously, a lot more has to be taken into consideration if you have like kids and things like that. But if it's just an adult only home, don't leave crap everywhere. Don't leave food on counters. Don't leave socks on the floor. Don't leave all this stuff because you're still in the process of getting to know the dog. Or if it's a puppy, you can create bad habits of, oh no, the puppy grabbed the sock and now you don't have anything to trade it with. So now you're going over to the puppy, snatching them, grabbing the thing out of their mouth, and that just creates conflict, to your point. And for dogs who are more prone to being possessive or resource guarding issues like Rotties, those types of dogs, Labs, even Golden Retrievers, those dogs, what a lot of people don't think, they are very prone to resource guarding issues if it's handled improperly in the beginning because they like having stuff in their mouth. And so if you're not prepared to be able to minimize conflict by training your dog and things like that, then manage your space, right? Keep your dog on a leash. If you are cleaning up the house and you're cooking dinner or doing something like that, have a structured like downtime,
Right.
like put them in the crate, things like that. So like if you can't have your eyes on your dog and it puts them in a position where they're going to get into stuff that they're not supposed to, then just take away that opportunity altogether.
Right.
You know?
I would say areas of excitement too. That's typically a thing that I recommend. So if you have a new dog and someone opens the door, that's an area of excitement or a time that stimulation happens, right? Kids running, sure. Kids running, you hugging your significant other. I would say
Dinner time.
dinner time.
Yeah.
Like
If
the
you
dog's
have-
excited about food and it's by its food, right? And you don't know the dog. Even dogs that I do know, I'm like, okay, get out of the way. Like, let's do this whole thing. Bikes,
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah.
If you're in a city and the dog came from some rescue that brought it out, like
Down
from the
south.
country, from down south or out of the country, those dogs aren't used to the city environment, right? So it's gonna be severely overwhelming. Train, people running by, like all of these different things. So anything that creates excitement could lead to a situation that can create a bite. You know what I'm saying? And so it's important that you know your dog and you're cautious, because once a dog bites, it's got a history, right? And also it's got a behavior that it was built, which is like, I can bite people. Like I wasn't able to bite people before, but now I feel like I can or have the ability to do so. And I think, once you have that, like it's you just don't trust the dog as much. The amount of dogs that get euthanized or rehomed because they say, well, my dog bit my husband or my wife, and then now all of a sudden it's like, well, we can't have this dog anymore, right? And the dog was fine for several years, and then we had this incident. Now we don't trust him. Now we got to rehome him, or in some cases euthanize because they can't get anyone to take the dog right now. And so I think that it's really important to watch out for anything that can lead to a bite, because you're gonna lose trust in the dog, right? Ultimately, it's the dog that suffers after everything's said and is done. So, looking at some of the questions that I have here, what are the things that? Well, this is a good one. Some dogs behave perfectly with trainers and not their owners.
Well, I think a lot of the times owners don't really know what they're looking at and don't have the answers for the dogs for what they should be doing. And I feel like a lot of the times trainers, most of the time we know what we're looking at, and the dogs, they can just feel the energy that we have the answers, because we historically have always showed them what they should be doing in certain situations, so they never have to guess. A lot of the times with the owners, the dogs will feel like they have to take matters into their own hands because that person has never given me the answers to this situation. And a lot of the times the trainers have, and so that's why they do better with us.
Too much unearned freedom. So like if they give the dog free reign of the house all the time and there's no structure, there's no, I'm always going to refer back to predictability. Dogs thrive with predictability. If they know what to expect next, they know how to follow a routine, all that type of stuff. And it doesn't have to be militant by any means, but if you just help your dog understand what they're supposed to do in certain situations, you will have a much better relationship and trust between, a mutual respect, basically.
Right.
And that's what owners see when the dog is working with us and they're acting like angels. It's because we have a mutual respect. I get the dog gets me, and they understand what I'm expressing to them and what I'm communicating.
Right. I would also add that it's the confidence that a trainer has in their handling. Like it travels on the leash.
Yeah.
I think there's a level of nuance or something that the dog experiences where, I will apply a prong collar slightly faster or with a little more intention than they're used to.
Yeah.
So they're like, pressure sit, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I'm gonna sit, right?
Yeah.
And then they're used to me handling them, like, oh, we're going here, we're doing this. Oh, this guy wants me to do this. And there is very little time to think when I handle. It's like, we're going here. Everywhere we go, there's something I want you to do, either be in a rest or be, doing something. So the confidence of handling often leads to the dog's like, I think you know what you're doing, so I will just follow along.
Yeah.
There's a lot of clarity when it comes to the trainer handling.
Yeah. So having some confidence in the trainer having confidence is sometimes why that happens. And so often when there's a dog bite, the owner loses a crap ton of confidence in their dog, and there's all this shame, fear, and concerns that we as trainers have to take another part-time job, which is let me rebuild the owner's confidence, right? And we have to say, hey, I know this sucks, but what kind of drills or what kind of conversations we need to have and drills to do in order to rebuild your confidence, right? And see your dog back from a different lens so that you can handle them with purpose, which often that is what's going to create the success, especially after a dog bite. All right, so let's go to the next segment. So here are questions for you guys. What is the most memorable incident you've experienced that taught you something important about dogs?
Always expect the unexpected. Also take into consideration the other things that people have told you. So I'm going to go back to the incident that I had with a dog, a German Shepherd that we had here, Taker. I had trained that dog every day while he was here, and there was some whispers that the kennel techs were having some trouble getting him in and out of the kennel, or getting him back into his kennel. And I didn't think anything of it because he never showed any signs like that to me. Mm-hmm. And then one day, I was putting him back, and thankfully I took his e-collar off first before I took his prong off. But the moment I took his e-collar off, he instantly jumped at me and with intention to bite me. Luckily, I had his prong on, so I was able to put the leash up and away from myself so he wasn't able to actually get me. He was only able to grab my sweater and my training vest. But that would be a memorable incident to me. Just take into consideration that even if you have built a relationship with a dog, certain situations, if you hear about instances where that dog might be a little bit iffy, kind of acknowledge that and just always be prepared for those.
If you're dangerous.
Yeah. Be prepared for that because you just never
Right.
know.
I would say, kind of the same like type of mindset to be in is like expecting a dog to have the potential to do something that they've shown you they've done before to other people. So without naming any names, I have the scar to prove it, is we had a dog who had been a client for years and no issues. And we had somebody, or the family, the boyfriend moved in, started displaying aggression issues.
Can I say that I called it?
Yeah,
As soon
did.
as I saw the dog.
You did. And I think that I was in denial about it because I had known the dog for so long. And, I think that's also the beauty of having like a fresh set of eyes to something. And maybe it was like my ego taking over a little bit.
I think you're in denial about this dog.
Because it was hard for me to believe knowing this dog for so long. And this was, I think, one of my first pretty severe cases working with behavioral dogs and things like that. And it definitely taught me a lesson. But basically, long story short, the dog was aggressing towards the boyfriend, never displayed any aggression towards myself or the mom or anything like that. And then we had gone out to do like an exercise outside, and I had brought my dog along. And something that happened within, that time outside had triggered him to go at his mom. And he off-leash trained, so he was off-leash at the time. And so my dog running away and me calling her back to me triggered him to get frustrated. And I didn't have my eyes on it at the time, but from what the mom described, she was holding him back. And I think that just bubbled everything over. And so all those emotions kind of redirected back onto her, and he was just attacking her. Luckily, she had a winter coat on, but he was going up her arms, going for the neck, all that type of stuff. And so I got bit in the process of saving her from that situation and getting potentially very, very hurt. But because he had shown signs of having that ability to get to that point, was something that I think that I, again, was in denial about, that because he hasn't shown it to me or her yet, that it wasn't possible.
That's a scary one, man.
It was a
because
very
you can't
scary
even
one.
you couldn't even convince the owners that was the case. I remember saying it so many times for like record's sake. This dog will bite. This dog will bite. This dog has the ability to bite, even to them. And I remember it being something that it was hard to believe simply because of the long-term relationship.
Right.
And the dog looked like a teddy bear, right? But
He was so sweet.
But there was something about his movement, or he basically did things that were different than other dogs. Like when you approach him, some dogs will be like, "Oh, hello." This dog would stand still and just wait. And it's like, okay, so clearly you have a level of confidence for this. The stillness of his behavior always told me a lot. Not stiffness, stillness. Like he was just like, oh, there's a person.
Because he
here.
wasn't rigid. He seemed relaxed,
Yeah.
but he didn't show any emotion.
But he was observant. You know what I'm saying? Like he was always at that like threshold where you look at the dog, it's like the dog saw something outside, and I think it's going to get up to go see what's outside. He felt like that the entire time. Like he was perpetually about to do something. You know what I'm saying? So what was the thing that taught you?
To always believe what the dog is showing you.
Yeah.
Always. Like, again, even if it's not, if it hasn't started off with being geared towards you, if they have shown that ability to get to that level before in a different situation, that there's always a possibility that it can happen to you.
Right.
You know, that story will always stick with me. And again, I have the scar that will always remind me. It's on my hand. But I'll always remember that case. One of the saddest cases of my entire life.
I think process is big. Like anytime that I've seen someone get bit outside of the trainer sense, right? Because unfortunately, the part of behavior is that what makes you good is that you've seen it. It's really hard to describe behavior. I mean, you could sit there and like read a textbook and do all the YouTube videos you want and like go to all the courses and follow all the dog trainers around the world and be like, I've trained and studied with this one person forever. Straight up, that does not, like, your body's not going to take that information and give you the muscle memory and the nuance and train your nervous system to look at something and call it for what it is. No information in the world is going to prep you. So, like, being in those situations and being guided through those situations. And I think that what I've learned, so that's one thing. So that's hard to teach, right? That's hard to teach. You got to experience it. So this is why we don't have a lot of people. We have like one, and typically you have a number two that's working with you on behavior cases. And basically, like, there's just a handful of behavior people in the city of Chicago, like, that can tackle certain things because they've gone through it and they're still here, right? Because a lot of people quit. They get bit and they're like, this industry is not for me, right? Especially if it's earlier on in their training. But when you succeed and experience certain things, then now you have very unique things to share and bring to the industry. I would say that, like, for me on the operations side of things, it's process. Process is everything. If you have 30 people running around doing stuff with dogs, if you don't have rigid processes and you allow people to bend the rules, people are going to get bit. That's just the reality of it. So you just wake up every day and you're like, did you do the ABCs? Cool. You did the ABCs. If you didn't do the ABCs, okay, well, that's why this happened, right? But I would say doubling down on process. And I always regret not being a bigger asshole. I always regret not being a bigger asshole. I always regret being nice or being forgiving. But I mean, it's not that I don't want that I don't want to be. Just my experience has taught me don't, because people with risky behavior will do risky things that will get bit, right? If people skip steps, that's going to be an issue. So people that are, join the company, they probably think we're crazy for doing all this, but it's like, it's a serious stuff, it's serious stuff that can happen. And I think for me, there was a time where this happened, over a decade ago, where volunteers that gave themselves their own credentials, like I am a master dog trainer, or I am a behavior trainer, or I'm whatever, would come in here for volunteer with a rescue dog program at the time and would just get bit instantaneously. Like, they would just like, I'm gonna get this dog and and then they'd be like, oh my God, I gotta go. And now the dog's got a bite history and and he's not adoptable anymore because he's got a bite history. That made me double down on process, and that most people are gonna give credentials that they don't have. They're just gonna be like, I'm capable of this, and they'll blissfully tell you this is what I'm capable of, but it's not true. So, a good way to vet those things and is a process, safety processes, training, safety processes, training. So that was the thing for me. What was the moment where you're preventing a bite because you read the behavior properly?
I think so. There was this one time, and it was at the end of my group class, and the dog was a puppy, like 6-7 months old, and he was biting at the leash, tugging on the leash, treating it like a toy. And because I knew the dog, I understood the dog's behavior and his intention, I knew that dog was going to bite the handler that was trying to get him to let go of the leash. Me understanding that, was able to kind of jump in and assess the situation and see that the handler was drive building the dog into continuously tugging at the leash and not actually getting him to out the leash. So luckily I was able to grab the leash and pull up and create the gag reflex in order for him to spit out the leash. And because I already knew based off of the dog's body language, he was going to redirect. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was prepared for that, and I was able to prevent him from coming back at me once he let go of the leash, and then put him into a behavior that I knew he knew. So I asked him to sit, and he sat, and then spit it out, and then was able to let him kind of settle after that. But again, it was because I knew the dog and I understood the drive that dog had, and was able to assess his body language, which helped me prevent the bite from me to me and to the other person that was with me.
This one's pretty recent, so it's just the first thing that came to my mind. We have a dog who's currently in a boot camp program. She's done training in the past, but she's a border collie, and so she's very, very smart and very attached to her people and things like that. And one of the behaviors that she started displaying when being checked out, because she started with doing a daycare and training first and then transitioned into a board and train, is whenever she would check out with her owners, as soon as the leash was handed off, she would turn around and try to get the handler that just handed her off to the owners. And so being able to recognize that and develop a routine that can help everyone involved safely handle the dog and be able to set boundaries. So it's a combination of what can the handler handing the dog off to do to prevent that anybody in the situation from getting harmed. So what does that involve? It involves putting the muzzle on the dog, putting the proper equipment on the dog. So actually using the tools that the dog understands to be able to give her clear direction, and if necessary, provide feedback if she does escalate and tries to go at the person. So that's something that I think that is really important, is again, like through experience, like knowing the dog's history, knowing what they're willing to do and what they're capable of, and adjusting to be able to prevent that.
I feel like prevent my bites every day, because, everybody gets so confident, especially in protection training, where I'm like, all right, step on your leash, or hey, I think your dog's gonna bite me. So I told one of our trainers here with his new dog, I was sitting, I'm not gonna say his name. One of his dogs, he's a really nice Malinois. And I was sitting there in a chair, and I was like, hey, hold on to your leash, because this dog's gonna try to bite me, right? Hold on to your leash. And he did get a little closer, and then, he caught the dog multiple times for trying to bite me, right? People need to prioritize themselves first. Like, if you're injured, you can't help people.
Yeah.
Prioritize yourself first.
What was it that you saw about the dog that made you think that he was going to bite you?
His eyes were on me. I mean, a lot of dogs' eyes are on me. I think back in, 2014, there was a dog. I was coming out of what is now, the front admin office. And I remember there was a dog on the floor, kind of squatted down on the floor. And I saw it, and I was like, that dog's gonna try to bite me. So I kind of hugged the wall a little bit, right? And stayed close to the wall. And then I said to the owner, hey, you're here with so-and-so, right?
I think
and she said, yeah. About. And I remember, I looked at the dog, I said, I think your dog's gonna try to bite me. And she's like, no, she's not. And I went to reach to shake their hand, and the dog ran up and tried to jump up and bite me in the face. And the only reason it didn't is because the owner held on to the leash, right? So he caught it right on time.
Was this one of the videos that's in the SOPs for Tech 3 training?
It used to be in the SOPs.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It used to be. And your guys' is Tech 3 training. Now I don't put the videos there because then people are like, my dog's in the videos.
Yeah.
No, so it used to be on the Tech 3 training, pre or early COVID. You have to spend a lot of time with dogs, a lot of time with dogs. In this industry, you got to spend a lot of time with the animals that you're training to really identify them. It's kind of like, who was that lady, Jane Goodall, right? And she would sit there and spend time with the chimps. And but they're animals. They're not going to sit there and talk to you and tell you, this is how I feel and think. You have to spend a lot of time with them so you understand the way they communicate, right? And if you don't do those things, you're going to be misreading information. You're going to think something means something else, and it's not. It's almost like a dog that bites you for a ball because you got in the way is very different than a dog that bites you because it's aggressive, or bites you because it's defensive, or bites you because it's pushing you out of a territory. So there's very different reasons. And so spending time with dogs, a lot of it, and it doesn't always have to be training, just hanging out with them, watching them, taking them out to the park, watching them play with each other. Those are all things that you should do if you're a professional looking to get into behavior and prevent bites. It's an incredible amount of times that I ask owners, can you just come here and work for a little bit, because your dog problem is a 10 and your handler skill level is a 2.
Yeah.
And so straight up, no matter what I do, you can't fix your problem and you can't handle your dog. So I need you to come in here, become a little bit of a professional. You kind of have to become a little bit of a professional if you're going to keep this dog. You know what I'm saying? So the last thing is like, what's everyone's piece of advice to keep the public safe from dog bites? Public, owners, trainers, handlers. What's one piece of advice?
That's a good question.
I already have mine, but I want to.
Yeah, you got time to prepare your answers.
Well, I just thought about like what keeps you from being involved in any dog bites.
Ooh, well, I just look at the dog in front of you and don't assume that it's not a possibility. Always play it safe. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because 99% of the time, dogs are predictable. Like,
Right.
if you can see the context of the situation, right, know that, the dog feels a certain type of way about something, you can predict that there is a chance that the dog will bite. But
Yeah, just because you're a dog person doesn't mean that the dog's gonna sense that and love that. Because
Yeah.
you always hear dogs love me. Yeah, well, you're the first person to get bit because you
Yes.
think that. I mean, I was that person when I was a kid and got
Yeah.
bit in the face because of that. You know,
There's-
so
yeah, there's
Is
a
that what
difference
happened?
between
yeah, when I was a
got
kid,
bit in the
I got
face?
bit in the. I have a scar on my chin right here somewhere from a pity that I literally went up to. I just met this dog. The guy was a kid from school. I was like 13. He was walking the dog, and I was like, "Oh my god, the dog's so cute. Can I like pet him?" He was like, "Yeah." I go up, and the first thing I do is get down to the dog's level to his face, and I'm squishing his face. I was like, "Oh, you're so cute." Boom. Quick instant dog like lunges at my face. I back up and I'm like, "I thought you said the dog was friendly." And the kid goes, "He's not my dog," and then kept walking. And I was like, "What the heck?" But yeah, so like those are the first people. I am one of them. I was one of them where I'm like, I'm a big dog person. All dogs love me. I'm the dog whisperer. And then boom, I got bit in the face
Yeah.
because I was a little overly confident and got into a dog's face that.
I'm gonna wrap up
yeah.
with two things. One, assume every dog's gonna bite you.
Yep.
Every dog is gonna bite you. You look at them, might bite you. Right? It walks on four legs, barks, might bite you. If it's a cat, might bite you too.
Yeah.
But assume every animal is gonna bite you.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know them; they're strangers. Assume your dogs might bite you. So if you approach everything that way, you're gonna be safe. And for the public, put your dog in a crate.
Yes.
Just put it in the crate. You're at the patio, at the bar, etc., and it's late in the evening, and you have a Rufflin in your car. Put it in there, drop the windows, let it chill. If you are at home and you have people coming over, put the dog in the crate. If you know what I'm saying, like just put the dog away, and it's your dog. If you want to keep it safe and prevent dog bites, like just keep it away from big settings that it's unfamiliar with. Like if you have people that are coming over, family, everything else like that, yeah, let them hang out, but. I knock on wood. I've never gotten a dog person bit till this day. And in my mind, it's just a matter of like, assuming every dog's gonna bite and play safe and put dogs away. Kennel them, crate them, whatever, but they can't bite anyone if they're not around anyone. So, but yeah, so we're gonna wrap up here, guys. And so thank you for listening and we'll see you guys next time.
bye.